Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is still doing well. I have a very interesting and very strange bonus upload to share with you. Before we get into it, a couple links. As you all know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership are in the description below. Merch is displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support this channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost you a cent. Click that like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all of these things, they really do help this channel to continue to grow and go, and yes, folks, they definitely do matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to tonight's final bonus, shall we? In today's first terrifying experience, something luring us into the forest preface, I would like to share with you a true paranormal experience of mine to the best of my memory. To my extreme apprehension, about an hour and a half ago, I called one of my friends who was present in both encounters to confirm the accuracy of the events that I remember. I asked questions carefully and sequentially to ensure that she remembered all of the minor details. Everything was confirmed. Part 1, the doppelganger. This happened about 10 years ago when I was in college in Tennessee. I had a friend who had been studying photography, and I'd often join her to go to shoots of the scenery. One of my favorite photo ops were local cemeteries. After noticing some strange orbs in the nighttime cemetery photos, we became fascinated with the phenomenon and began to pursue the elusive orb, finding maybe a dozen in 100 photos. As a tough guy skeptic, I always brushed it off as dust or bugs reflecting in the camera flash. But I would be lying to say that I was not somewhat intrigued by the suggestion of something paranormal in these cemeteries. One evening, I suggested a cemetery that I had visited before. An hour-and-a-half drive on a country road in rural Tennessee, the sun setting. We got in a car and began the trip. This cemetery borders a state park and is surrounded on all sides by miles of dense forest, save for the long old winding road with a few modern and very few old homes. As I mentioned, I am a skeptic, but there is something unquestionably unnerving about old homes. They look like old plantation manors you would see in a history book or an old painting, decrepit during the day, but at night, on a long dark country road, they are an ominous beast looming out of the forest. They are just abandoned homes. But contemplating on the burial history of plantations in the South, the giant shadows in the forest become absolutely sinister. The state park alongside the cemetery is home to ruins of a 200-year-old mining operation. Traces of mining are now limited to a series of enormous gaping holes in the forest floor, some 50 feet across, 50 feet deep. A once towering pig iron furnace now only protruding a few mossy bricks above the ground, the abandoned plantation manors, and lastly, the cemetery. In the state park, the families grilling burgers, camping, the children playing in creeks are free of concern of what was happening on the ground they are now enjoying 200 years ago. The sun has set, and on this unlit road we pass old houses with their square frames and tall pillars cloaked in darkness. The moonlight makes their shadows twist and writhe like grotesque living things. As we approach the cemetery, I imagine fleeting visions of bloody and horrifying history, Slaves brutally forced to dig mines so deep they lost sight of the sun, forced to toil in the searing furnace and handle molten iron. It dawned on me that while the cemetery existed then, there are no graves spared for workers. My photographer friend and I park on a small dirt shoulder in front of the large cemetery. There's no pavement or parking spaces. The cemetery grounds are unusual expansive, 1,000-foot wide glade surrounded by a vast forest. Tombstone range from the newest at the entrance to early 1800s in the rear, punctuated by lots of suspiciously vacant of stone. The oldest stones at the edge of the cemetery are little more than small rocks with no visible markings. It is not unusual for small and old cemeteries, but the most ancient stones, whose engravings had not yet been completely claimed by time, reveal a disturbing fact. Most of the graves are children. At the rear of the cemetery, we can't see the entrance, merely a solid line of forest in all directions. The moonlit glade is strikingly contrasted against the blackness of the forest, which seems to aggressively reach up toward the night sky, struggling to complete its reclamation of time and history which should never have existed. The feeling is ominous, and the forest has a threatening present. An hour or so of taking photos of the midnight cemetery, we leave without incident, this time. The next day we meet to analyze the photos and are stunned at what we see. Orbs, 100 in a single photo, none in the next, some that curiously hang over my shoulder in the photos of myself. They're pale but colorful. There are thousands of them in photos. I strain to remember dust, pollen, and bugs, but can't recall any. I'm confused. One thing is clear, we have to return. A few days later, we resolved to make the dark journey again. Interested by the photos we shared, two friends joined us. Now we are 4 strong, cameras, flashlights in hand. We once again depart the safety of campus with the setting sun. The moon promises to light our way again. We approach the plantation manor houses, and as if they are sinister intentions, steal away. The once comforting moonlight, cloud-covered, plunges us into pitch blackness. The writhing pillar shadows on the old houses are gone, replaced by layers upon layers of shadows. The damaged wood siding on the front of the houses now resembles a monstrous-sized version of Rodin's Porte de la Nefer. One of the girls gasps. As we pass the manor, she swears she saw a pale figure in the abandoned window. Had it been one of the damned souls of Rodin's sculpture? On the dark country road, assaulted by the sinister shadowy structures, it is not so strange to believe that the spirits of the slave owners have found no peace here. The clouds are unrelenting as we approach the cemetery in total darkness. We park on the shoulder again, at the edge of the forest on the western side of the cemetery, and step out into the cool, crisp night. Into the glade in the forest, we walk east toward the oldest graves. While taking photos, we cannot help but notice a change in the atmosphere from our previous visit. Coyotes howl far in the distance, but the sounds of the forest are discomfortably absent. It is dead silent. The cool, crisp air feels cold. The surrounding wall of trees that once reached for the sky has completed its effort, and we are now surrounded in pitch black, cold silence. Our small flashlights don't penetrate the darkness. They serve merely to illuminate our only companions in this encompassing void, the graves. There's no wind, and the air feels stale and thick. The threatening presence of the forest is pervasive and hackle-raising. We return to the car. Before departing, I take a small blue pocket flashlight, walk northward into the forest to relieve myself. As I'm walking back toward the car, I notice the passengers have started my car and seem to be frantically shining their flashlights toward the south forest, opposite of the direction I had walked. I reach the car. After being separated for no more than 5 minutes, they turn their flashlights northward toward me, and panic begins. The other male in our group was not only a skeptic, but probably the most calm and level-headed person I've ever known. I had never heard him raise his voice, never seen him get angry or upset in all the years I've known him. The instant I open the car door, he leaps across the driver's seat, grabs me by the collar, yanking me quite forcibly into the car. His eyes are crazed. The expression itself is terrifying. Girls are screaming and crying. The passenger slams the car into gear. They're all screaming, "We got to get out of here." I've never seen people so terrified in my entire life. Racing down this tiny road, the shadowed manors and the surrounding forests seem a little closer to the road than they did in the way in. After we put some distance between us and the manors and the cemetery, my passengers finally calmed down enough to tell me what happened. A minute or two after I had walked away from the car, they saw my blue flashlight in the forest, the south forest, opposite of the direction I had walked. From the south forest, they then heard me repeatedly calling for help. I'd never made a sound. At that moment, they were deciding to go south into the forest and look for me. When they saw me approaching from the north, completely panicked. They believe more sinister forces were very near, trying to lure them into the forest. I called it the doppelganger because prior to all of this, I had never heard of skinwalkers, fleshgates, or ghostmen. I had, of course, heard lots of ghost stories. I believed that my encounter was strange and unique. I had never heard of an entity trying to lure people into the woods. I was in such disbelief that this was not a unique encounter that I phoned the present friends to confirm all of the events. I did elaborate because I believe the setting is very relevant to the encounter, which in itself was very brief. Last night, while recounting and recollecting my memories of the event, something truly horrifying occurred to me. This wasn't the first time something had tried to lure us into the forest. There's a 13-mile hiking trail in the forest, which I've completed many times over the years. I only discovered the cemetery because the trail intersects the cemetery around the 10-mile mark. There are several backcountry shelters along this trail, 2 of which I have camped at. The shelters are basically 3 wooded walls, a roof, in front of a large fire pit. One shelter is about a half a mile due south of the cemetery. The trail leading between the cemetery and this shelter is rather well developed as a road can be after being abandoned for 200 years. The campsite is named Hall Springs for an array of natural springs that emerge from underground between the cemetery and the shelter. There are ancient stone structures along the abandoned road that appear to be from the same time period as the mining operation. They look to be chimneys, but there is no central opening, so they appear more like giant pylons beckoning to something that no longer exists. To reach the Hall Springs shelter, one would typically hike the first 10 miles of backcountry. Several years before this encounter, I'd invited a friend and her younger brother to camp with me who were not as keen on long hikes as I was. Knowing about the nearby intersection with the cemetery, I suggested that they be dropped off there as a meeting point so I could quickly guide them to the camp in daylight. A late start for me set our rendezvous at dusk, but they only wanted to camp anyway. The abandoned road makes only about the first half of the half mile from the cemetery to camp. It is peculiarly wide for a backcountry trail, 6 feet across, straight and flat, lined on each side by a ditch, then immediately the wall of dense, impassable forest. It certainly feels as unnatural as it is, a perfect hallway to hell in the middle of the forest. After spending the day preparing camp, cutting firewood, cleaning brush, I set off on the one-way path direction to the cemetery. The abandoned road, the hallway, offers a strange atmosphere. The woods just seem wrong. The path is out of place. I paid it no mind as I made my way to the rendezvous point. Uneventfully, I picked up my friends and led them back down the path to the cemetery to the camp. Dusk sets, and the last light fades from the night sky as I lit the large campfire for cooking dinner and keeping us warm. My friend and her brother came with their own vehicle, against my suggestion of being dropped off. I didn't like the idea of leaving a car parked on the side of the road, as there was no parking lot for the cemetery whatsoever. The campfire was comforting. The fog produced a cold spring water rising from the mysterious underground source. Well, into the dark of the night, as the fire waned, we all heard a distinct voice yelling aloud from the north. I sat up from my bench bed and stepped toward the forest. The light of the campfire made a sharp ending immediately in the fog. Blackness, so dark even the forest was obscured from sight. Just at the edge of the fire's light, I stopped with my ears toward the voice, discerning what it could be. Words I could not distinguish, merely a male voice, gruff and loud. While I could not perceive words, there was no mistaking an authoritative, demanding tone, demanding that I comply with words that I failed to understand. My fears had been confirmed, and I knew the source of the voice immediately. The police had found the abandoned vehicle on the side of the road and were demanding that we return immediately to face consequences. The voice was commanding us that we come north, back to the cemetery, to answer. I'm not a criminal and thought at once that I must return to meet the police officer in the cemetery to explain that we're simply camping, apologize for the inappropriate parking. This train of thought made perfect sense to me, but simultaneously it made no sense. We're in the middle of nowhere at the end of a dead-end road in the middle of the night. My friends were upset but not stricken that we had been busted, as I suggested to them. I agreed with them that either the police officer would come down the trail directly to us and we would work it out peacefully, or, in the very worst case, the vehicle would be towed and we'd have to simply call for a ride home. The night passed with no police officers and no more voices from the direction of the cemetery. With the efficiency of Occam's razor, I had easily explained the voice calling from the dark forest. Yet the uneasiness stayed with me throughout the night, and I slept waiting for some unknown at the front of the shelter with a K-bar firmly in my hand. Little more history. The old mining operation was made possible thanks to the railroad running alongside the forest. Local legends about this area are extensive. As a Google search for the White Screamer or Werewolf Springs will reveal, I've made no effort yet to find historical documents regarding a train derailment, but supposedly one of which was transporting a traveling circus occurred in the 19th century. All of the animals were recovered, save for 2 Borneo wild men. These were stories told as Boy Scouts in our youth, and I have never given them any credit aside from the fact that they were at least prophylactic. Perhaps all paranormal encounters can be explained by drawing extraordinary conclusions, as I did, by relating my experiences in both encounters. Even as a man of science, I'd be lying, however, to say that I am not intrigued by the possibility of that which is far beyond my explanation. Today's second terrifying encounter. Many years ago, my husband and I attended a wedding, a family wedding. The rest of my family were attending as well, and we all had to travel some way to book accommodations the night before the wedding. Most of my family managed to book into a single hotel, but there was not quite enough room for us there. Consequently, we booked into a farmhouse B&B about a mile down the road. We met up with family at the hotel for a drink and then walked back to the B&B. The walk between the hotel and the B&B are rural. There was no street lighting, just a really dark country lane with high hedges on either side of the road. We were chatting as we were walking along until we heard this rustling on the other side of the hedge. We laughed and said it was probably just livestock, but the noise followed us down the road, just the other side of the hedge. We began to speed it up, and the noise sped up with us. Something was definitely following us on the other side of the hedge. We managed to work each other up into a state of slight hysterical panic as we increased our pace. I don't think it had been long since we had watched The American Werewolf in London. When we arrived at the farmhouse, we had been given a key to let ourselves in, and we fumbled with the key trying the lock, convinced we were both about to get mauled to death. Our jangled nerves were thrown further up the scale when we almost fell into the farmhouse kitchen, having successfully unlocked the door, and the farmhouse collie dog went off like a barking banshee. It took ages to settle. I am sure the whole family heard our arrival. We never found out about the mysterious noise on the other side of the hedge, but we were both too embarrassed to mention the incident to anyone. Sounds daft now, but at the time, we were really spooked. Today's third encounter. So my family lives on a road that isn't traveled as most. Not necessarily in the middle of nowhere, but not either. It's a beautiful house and a beautiful land, but something about the house across the street always rubbed me the wrong way. When we first moved into the house, it was midsummer, so plants were grown over, and you couldn't tell there was a house there. Once fall came, everything started to clear up, and there it was. I wouldn't go into details about the house aside from it not being big whatsoever. A double-wide trailer set back from the road, and beyond it is a massive hill that goes up onto a nice flat landing, and it's nothing but forest for miles. So naturally, this flat landing at the top of the hill became a regular spot for my friends and I. We would go up there in the summertime, camp out, drink, have fires. However, we've never been able to spend a whole night up there. First night we tried to spend up there, we were sitting around the fire drinking, and we thought it'd be funny to start smacking trees with branches like all the Bigfoot guys talk about. I know it's stereotypical, sounds fake, whatever. In the distance you hear a response of something smacking a tree with a branch. Immediately, I'm okay enough with that, and I sit my butt down. So, some time passed, we figured a tree branch snapped, whatever. We're still on edge, but it was what it was. About 15 to 20 minutes later, you hear an audible growl from somewhere outside of the light from the fire. That was when we said hell no and got all our stuff and sprinted down the hill. Okay, so one thing that happened was not very scary. Whatever this next thing to this day is still mind-boggling, and I can't even begin to understand it. My buddy and I decided we wanted to hang out one night, and we thought it'd be fun and scary to head up onto the hill and hang out on the landing. So with nothing but a flashlight, we headed up and sat down on the rock and just chilled. I'm panning the flashlight around, talking about how creepy it would be if I shined the light on a creature or something. All of a sudden, my buddy's phone starts blowing up, and shortly after, mine does as well. We check, and it's another friend of ours. Hey, I'm at your house. Where are you guys? So we tell him, hang on, we'll be down there to get him. The guy that was down at my house had never been up the hill, so we told him about it. And he's like, let's go. We start heading up the hill, and once we get about halfway, we start hearing twigs and snapping and leaves getting pushed around on the ground. And immediately my mind goes to coyotes, so I told them we should probably just head down for the night because I don't want to get attacked by a coyote. We all agree and head down the hill. So we're standing in the middle of the road, and all of a sudden, we started to hear a cow mooing right on top of the hill. It was almost robotic and perfectly timed out, like moo, moo, over and over, the exact same sound. I asked one of the guys who has lived on the road his entire life if there's any farms on this road or around here. Turns out the closest farm that has cows is miles away, the next town over. So needless to say, we went right back into the house. My friend, who takes everything way too seriously, started looking into it and said, no doubt, Skinwalker. So, being that we gave goofy names to everything, we named the place Skinwalker Ridge, and we have not been back there since. Few times, though, I've been leaving my family's place at night, and you can hear across the road in the dense forest branches breaking, heavy stamping. It's unnerving. So nothing out of this crazy world. I never saw anything, but I heard things, and I firmly believe I know exactly what's going on up there. Tonight's final encounter. I can't shake this strange encounter I had a few days ago, and I hope someone has some savvy knowledge on Southeast America, or really anywhere, wooded cryptids, who knows. I was driving home with my boyfriend one night. We live off a major highway in southeast Georgia. He wasn't paying attention to the side of the road, which was tall grass before a tree line, but I was. You tend to have to watch for deer who decide it's fun to fling their bodies into your car. Suddenly, right at the start of this tall grass, I practically made eye contact with the creepiest looking dog I had ever seen. It was standing there like a deer in the headlights, staring with these creepy, piercing eyes that look a hell of a lot like a cougar or coyote's eyes. It was huge, tan-colored, with weirdly far apart arms like it was heavy set. It had a strange face that looked almost human, with a big black nose and rounded, medium ears that were pointed to the sides. I thought it was a dog, and I panicked and made a U-turn at one of those random U-turn exits. We went around, and it was nowhere to be seen. I think I really have to put emphasis on the fact that it was not a dog. It just wasn't. This thing was creepy as hell. I can't get over it. All right, so this next video clip that I'm going to share with you, I hate sharing my opinion, but there's been 2 videos as of late that I really have shared my own opinion. The reason why I don't like sharing my opinion is because I don't want my opinion to affect anyone else's. I hope that no one out there, because I have a channel and because I research all the time and talk to a lot of people, I don't want people to be like, well, he has all that and he knows this and he does that I know any more than anyone else, because I don't. To be honest, no one knows any more than anyone in this field. And that's the great thing about this field, cryptozoology, because you could be studying for 50 years, work for, some elite government program, and still not know something else. Someone that just entered into this field knows something that person doesn't know. You could be, starring on a TV show or be a guest on a TV show. And, mainstream has kind of given us that view of, hey, if they're on TV, hey, they wrote a book, hey, they did that, they must be an expert. There are no experts. There are no experts at all in this. And, anybody who says they're an expert, I'll call them out and call them a fake. That's the bottom line, to be honest with you. I think there are people that know stuff that others don't know, but it's a science on theory. It's a science based on theory, opinion. Unless you have a Dogman, a werewolf, or a Bigfoot, or a crawler strapped down in your basement and you've dissected that and you have the science degree of whatever to back that up, then maybe you're an expert. But nobody does that. Nobody has that. Government, but not us. So that's why I don't like sharing my opinion. But I'm going to share my opinion on this video as well. So, in how many pictures have we seen, oh my God, look at this photo that I got in my backyard, and it's one print. Like one amazing kind of canine looking print that's big, and they put a shoebox next to it. Or maybe 2, side by side, or, but never like a walking pattern. Now, in this video clip, there are multiple in a walking pattern. Now, this is either a very, very good hoax and they thought it through, or these people caught something. That's my opinion. Check it out.
You got a cigarette box?
No, just put my boot next to it. Fucking boot clean in half, and then this next to it.
shot of it. That might be a better one there.
And it's going up the hill.
Hey, what about just digging a hole and burying them?
It's only 2 grand.
Yeah, that's right. What about up there? What's up there?
No, that's not it. Yes, sir.
Well, you can see where something's dragged it down there.
Yeah.
I didn't look to see if the other car was still up there.
Your boss will be his eyes open up.
Alright guys, a very strange but very informative bonus upload to end this day off with. I hope you all enjoyed it. I just want to let you all know that I do appreciate all of your support and kindness. It really does make this channel special. It makes it what it is, to be honest. You guys are the heart and soul of this channel. You are the reason why the channel continues to grow and go, and it is appreciated. Please, everyone, stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, our pets, our family, and friends. These creatures are real. They are out there, and they are dangerous. Share a little bit of information, that same info that we share with each other here on a daily basis, and it may just save their life someday. Until next time, God bless you all.